The Ruger Blackhawk Convertible in 45 Colt and 45 ACP. Let's check it out. Guys, I grew up on old westerns, whether it was Gunsmoke, Bonanza, or even the Lone Ranger, and it really inspires you to be a cowboy. And I guess that's why I have such a love for single action revolvers. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Ruger Blackhawk. This was introduced in 1955, and because of a lot of the westerns and the different TV shows that were coming out. Now, Colt was king of the hill, and they were selling a lot of single action revolvers. But Ruger came in with a quality firearm, and yet the price was really lower than the Colts. And since 1955, over 2 million Blackhawks have been produced. Now, the first Ruger Blackhawks were in .357 Magnum, but we're taking a look today at a 45 Colt with a 45 ACP cylinder, and these are called convertibles. And they make a number of different convertible models. But this is the traditional classic single action in that classic 45 long Colt. And yet, if you want to jump it up to more modern calibers, you've got other options. Now, I've owned a Colt 45 long Colt for a number of years, and I just love the way it shoots. I like that big bore. One thing I love about Ruger is that you can shoot just mild loads, but you can up it. I mean, the velocities, and you can really shoot hot loads out of this because the Blackhawk is so strong. But when I came across this at a local gun show with the 45 ACP cylinder as the convertible, you know, man, this is the best of both worlds. Single action revolvers have a huge following. And there are some various reasons. First off is hunting. A lot of guys like to shoot handgun, and it's one of the things that the Blackhawk really brings. And again, the Super Blackhawk, which is a little bit larger, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But it just makes an excellent hunting companion. But also, just out on the trail, if you're hiking, doing whatever, it's a very reliable firearm. There's also cowboy action shooting, which has become extremely popular. I have a lot of friends that do that. And so any of these single action revolvers just really fits the bill very well. But there are some things with the Ruger Blackhawk that have surpassed some of the other designs. And so we're going to take a look at that. One of the big things about Ruger is it's just strong. It's a very strong firearm. And a lot of times in reloading manuals, especially for 45 Colt, it'll say, only use this load in a Ruger Blackhawk. But what really makes this sweet is to be able to have a separate cylinder that shoots 45 ACP. And one of the biggest things about that is the price of the ammo. 45 ACP is a lot less expensive than your 45 Colt. It's a lot more plentiful. And yet you're getting close to the ballistics on your typical target rounds. Now you can dumb these down like these. These are actually Leadville from Freedom Munitions. These are cowboy action loads. So they have a little bit of smoke added to the powder, so you probably noticed a little smoke going on. And then also, the power factor is lessened. But you can really rock out the 45 Colt to be able to match really high ballistics, which makes it an excellent hunting caliber. So the sky's the limit, and that's one of the things about a revolver, is you can put a number of different loads. If you want to put shot shells in here, you can. So it just gives you a lot of options for reliability. Let's go ahead and make sure the gun is unloaded. We're going to drop our loading gate, and we're just going to turn the cylinder, and it is unloaded. It holds 6 rounds of 45 Colt, and it'll hold 6 rounds of 45 ACP. There are different models with the convertible series. There is a 3840 with 10 millimeter. There's a 357 Magnum and 9 millimeter. And then we have the single 6, a 22 long rifle and a 22 Magnum. So there are a number of different choices, and there's a number of different barrel lengths. This is a 5.5 inch barrel, but it comes in a 4.62 inch barrel, which I have right here. Just a touch shorter, a little more compact. And then we have the 7.5 inch barrel, which a lot of hunters like that size. But this is the new model Blackhawk. There have been 3 other iterations of this handgun. And the first was just what they called the flat top. And it was just flat across the top. It did have a sight that kind of hung out, and it was a little bit exposed. With the new model Blackhawk, we have a raised area, and this protects that rear sight. And of course, this is fully adjustable, and you have a blade at the back, windage and elevation, and then here at the front you have a nice large serrated front post. And this can be removed if you want to put a different type sight on there. But this is just a single action pistol, and again, it's very reminiscent of what the cowboys used, and definitely inspired by Colt. Now, in 1942, Colt stopped production of their .45s, and a lot of that had to do with World War II. So in 1953, Ruger introduced their single 6, which is in .22 long rifle. Again, they do make a convertible model, and these were extremely popular. And from that time, they went to more of the centerfire calibers. And these come in a multitude of calibers that aren't convertibles. And of course, definitely different barrel lengths. It does come in a blue finish, but it also comes in stainless steel. And Blackhawk got its name from the Stutz Blackhawk automobile. And that's how they named the Blackhawk. But one of the things about the older type Rugers, now this one is the 3-screw. There was one before this, but the 3-screw, these are very highly sought after. In fact, they'll bring a premium. In fact, when I bought this one, it was more expensive than your standard single 6. But one of the problems with these pistols, and we're going to go ahead and make sure it's unloaded as well, and that's one of the problems, is you have to pull the hammer back to turn this chamber or the cylinder. And so that was one thing we don't have to do with the new model. But also, you'll look right here, and the hammer actually rests on the firing pin. There's no safety. And one of the problems, and this was all throughout the Old West, even with the Colts, is that you carried 5 rounds in the cylinder because it was unsafe. If this was dropped on something, it could fire the pistol. And so that was definitely a problem. The 3-screw model was offered from 1962 to 1972. And the flat top model was from 1955 to 1962. So those 2 models went by the wayside. They did not have what Ruger incorporated in 1972 as their transfer bar. And as I pull this back, you'll notice this bar coming up, and it actually blocks the action and keeps the hammer from touching the firing pin. And so that was a big safety plus for these pistols. So now you can carry 6 rounds in the new model Blackhawk. Plus the safety feature of having to pull the hammer back and half cock to actually turn the cylinder. If your finger slipped, you could set off a round. And so those 2 features really updated with the new model Blackhawk. But the 3-screw hammer action is more like a Colt. So it's a 1 click, 2 clicks, and then 3 clicks. And there is just something very satisfying about those 3 clicks. Now when it comes to the new model Blackhawk, and this also includes the new single 6s, there is not a half cock. You hear a click, but it doesn't rest until you pull it all the way back. And so it's just a different action. And while that sounds really nice, I still like this a little bit better. Man, that sounds just positive. But this thing is unsafe if you're not careful. But also the new model only has 2 screws. And so that is the way you differentiate. And again, if you have one of these, you want to check to make sure that you have a transfer bar or that you don't carry 1 round in that top chamber. Now all the Blackhawks have an alloy grip and alloy trigger guard. All this is steel, and it is nice and beefed up. In fact, the ejector rod is also an alloy aluminum. But when it came to the Super Blackhawk, those were made to fire .44 Magnum, and they have an all-steel grip on the back and trigger guard. And so that really gives it a lot of strength. And one of the things about the Super Blackhawk is they're actually stronger than lever-action rifles in .44 Magnum. You can load up some super hot loads, and the Ruger Super Blackhawk can take it. But even so, this really is a very strong action, and for the pressures you're going to be using, it didn't really require a steel grip. There's no markings on the cylinders, and when I first got this, I mean, I was looking everywhere, and I thought, what if I put the wrong rounds in the wrong cylinder? Well, first, let's go ahead and take our .45 Colt, and you drop it in, and it fits really nice. It head spaces using the rim of the case, and that just fits here. Now, typically with .45 in Revolver, a .45 ACP, you have to use moon clips because you need something to hold it from going through. But one of the things that Ruger did, and I'm going to show you, this will drop right in. If you put the .45 Colt in, it only goes about, it still has about a third of the case sitting out or a quarter of the case. Now, looking down into the cylinder, you'll notice that little ledge. And that's where the .45 brass seats. And so that is what head spaces the .45 ACP. And because of that, with the .45 Colt, it just drops all the way down. And so to get it out, you got to actually push it to bring it back out. So there's no way you're going to be able to fire these two if you have the wrong ammunition. This one, the cylinder's not going to close. This one, the firing pin's not even close. Now, one other thing that Ruger did above the Colt was they used coil springs instead of the leaf springs that were used by Colt. And so that really gave it more durability with the springs, and they had longer life. And so that was a big plus for the Rugers. Now, while this looks like a single-action cowboy gun, the rear sight, the adjustable sights, kind of turned some of the cowboy action guys off. And so Ruger designed the Vaquero. The Vaquero has fixed sights, but it pretty much is the exact same gun as the Ruger Blackhawk. They also made the Beasley model, which has a target grip, which Colt designed a few years ago, so it just gives it a totally different look. We have nice rosewood grips. The models that are coming out now have a hard polymer type grip that's checkered. You can get these grips from Ruger off the Ruger website, but there is a ton of different companies that produce grips. Whether you want to go with Stag, Black, G10, I mean, you name it. Hogue definitely makes good soft rubber grips. There's a lot of different models out there. The blue is really well done, but when it gets to the aluminum, it's pretty much black. And so it has a little bit of a contrast. Honestly, you probably wouldn't notice unless you were really looking for it. The bluing, though, on the Rugers, I mean, it's just a very nice finish on it. And, of course, these are more traditional, so bluing is more acceptable. We have a smooth, fairly wide trigger. On some of the early models, especially this little 3-screw 22, it has just a small, thin blade. Now, we have our ejector housing right here and our ejector rod, and this is how we unload the empty shells. So open up your loading gate first, that way you can spin the cylinder, and then right here with the cylinder rod, just press this button and then pull out your cylinder rod, and then it'll come out the other side. And it passes through the loading gate. And then we can take our .45 ACP, drop it in, and then just bring the latch down, but you have to kind of wiggle it just a little bit to get it in line. You don't have to press this to get it, but make sure that that cylinder rod is flush with this piece. If not, it just won't function. In fact, I'm going to just demonstrate it. If you get it down to here, and sometimes when you're nagling with it, it'll do that. And you do this, it'll lock the cylinder up, but it will not allow the hammer to come into the rear position. So if it's doing that, this is probably the culprit. Just push it in. Now you're ready to go. Now, what makes this a single action firearm? First off, if you pull the trigger, there's no action. So you have to pull the hammer back with each shot. And then when you pull the trigger, the cylinder will rotate as you pull the hammer back again, and it'll line up the next round. And then you fire it again. And every time you pull your hammer back, obviously with double action, you just pull the trigger and it actuates the hammer. With single action, all it does is it trips the sear to let the hammer go forward. And yes, this is a much older design than your double single action pistols, and obviously much older than your semi-automatics. But there's something that's just really traditional about these that make them a lot of fun. Let's check the trigger action. So we're going to go ahead and cock the hammer right here. There's no take up. You just have a little resistance, and then it's a nice crisp break. And of course, there is no reset, but you can see that it comes all the way out. And then when you pull the hammer back, you can see the trigger retracts all the way back to the back of the trigger guard. I'm going to tell you guys, that is a really nice trigger. And these are known to be very accurate. Let's check trigger pull weight with our Lyman trigger gauge from Brownells. 2 pounds, 13.3 ounces. 2 pounds, 15.8 ounces. There are those that really like to get that trigger pull weight down to around the 2 pound mark. But this is running just close to 3 pounds. And that makes this a really crisp gun. It breaks really cleanly. And that's just one of the things these are known for. Just like the 1911 is a single action pistol and the triggers are well known, same thing with this. There's just a lot less linkages. Now some people will say that the 3-screw actually had a better trigger pull. But if it's any better than this, it must be incredible. Now the Ruger Blackhawk, a new model in 45 Colt. 2 pounds, 5.4 ounces. Add the extra cylinder, 2 pounds, 14.8 ounces. Now being a single action, loading is a little bit different. We just drop our loading gate and then line up your hole for your cylinder and just drop in your rounds. A little slower than typical, obviously, but you know, a lot faster than black powder and percussion. And then you're loaded. Close the gate and you're ready to fire. Now, once you're finished to eject the rounds, here is your ejector rod. And you just push it down. And so we're going to go ahead and line up our cylinder and then just take and push it, and this will push it right out. Now these are obviously live rounds, so they're going to come out really simple. Slow to load, slow to unload, but has a powerful load. We want to thank Fiocchi for supplying the 45 ACP. We didn't have any 45 Colt from Fiocchi, so we're using some Leadville. This is from Freedom Munitions. One thing about this ammo is it's made to be smoky. This is for cowboy action. So it's going to be a little smoky naturally, and that's on purpose. Now one thing about taking a single action revolver out to the range, it's slow. It's slow to load. You know, you got to cock that hammer back, you know, with each shot. It's a single action revolver. But it has a lot of mystique, a lot of nostalgia when you think about the Old West and really where modern firearms really came from. But one thing I love about these though is that it kind of changes the dynamics. If you're not careful and you have a semi-automatic, you're just firing rounds and you're doing mag dumps and just putting rounds down range. With the Blackhawk or with any single action, I mean, you're bringing it out, you're pulling that hammer back, you're taking a shot, and there's just something that slows it down and just makes it more enjoyable. I love all kinds of shooting, but this really takes things down a notch. One thing about these two rounds, they're both in 45 caliber. It's more of a shove than a push with 9mm or even 357 Magnum. But one of the things is a really fairly soft shooting. Now we're shooting cowboy loads in the 45, so you know they're a little bit powered down, made that way. But you can really get loads up high on the 45 long Colt. I mean, you can really shoot some pretty high velocity ammunition. But with this 45 ACP, I mean, it's got more of a punch, but it's not a whole lot of different. You can just tell the difference. So I like the difference. I mean, if I want to go feel Old West and want to cowboy it up, jump out with a 45 Colt. if I want to go to Iwo Jima, I can pull out the old 45 ACP. Bringing that hammer back with your support hand, it just makes it faster. You tend to shoot faster. For me, if I'm going to shoot more accuracy, I'm going to shoot it like this. But definitely very quick, just to pull that back instead of having to readjust your grip, pulling it back, and then firing. So just bring it back, boom. Now for cleaning or maintenance, it's really simple, and just like we showed you before, just open up your loading gate and just check to make sure the gun's unloaded. Leave the loading gate open, press down on this button, pull out your cylinder rod. Now be careful because your cylinder can fall out, and so just be mindful of that. We're going to take out our cylinder, and you know, that's it for disassembly. I mean, it's really easy. You want to clean, especially this area up here at the top strap and around the forcing cone. Just keep this all clean from debris. Clean out your cylinder. Of course, you know, you can just do it one at a time. It's really simple. Get that face cleaned off. You will have to clean your barrel through the front, but just, you know, be careful. You just don't want to nick anything. But really, guys, that's about it. A little bit of lubrication on some of the moving parts, and you're good to go. Then, of course, reassembly. Just drop that cylinder back in there, pop it down, close it, and you're good to go. Function check, not that we need it, but a really simple design. One thing I do love about this is, except for the cylinder coming out, all the parts are retained, so you don't have to worry about losing a pin or something coming out. I mean, it's just simple, and I like simple. One of the big things about 45 Long Colt and 45 ACP is that the ballistics on your target loads are pretty close. You do have your more potential with your 45 Colt. It's got a bigger case. But one of the big things about 45 Colt is the price. Typically, it's about double the price of your 45 ACP. I think I saw it on Midway for $64.95. It was $34.95 for 45 ACP. And so this way you can shoot cheaper, even though you don't have a Blackhawk that comes in just 45. And then if you want to throw on your cowboy hat and your boots, here you go. You've got your 45 Colt. Or if you want to work up heavier loads, if you're a hand loader. And so it gives you options, but then it gives you more availability as well, because pretty much any gun shop you go into, they're going to have 45 ACP. 45 Colt, you know, it's coming in, and of course, you know, we've been through some shortages over the years, and it's been more difficult to get. But 45 ACP seems to be around more frequently. And really, for $100 more to get the cylinder for 45, you're going to pay for that in a very short time period. Now, while Colt stopped making their single-action 45s, they did start back making them over the years, and they really bring a premium. I mean, typically the Colt single actions are very expensive. They're very collectible. And also, production is a little bit irregular. So one of the things about Ruger, though, is it comes in at a very reasonable price. Now, over the years, manufacturing of revolvers has increased because the demand has decreased in some areas, but mainly because the demand for semi-automatics has increased greatly. A little more hand fitting that goes into these, and so the price reflects it. The retail price on the Ruger Blackhawk 45 Colt 45 ACP convertible is $929. If you get just the standard 45 Colt, they retail for $829. And of course, market price is typically less. One of the things, though, about these is the demand is high, and a lot of times when you're looking for them, they're just not in stock. And so they do bring a little bit more of a premium. But the Colt single actions, those can run up into the thousands. But they are beautiful, well-made revolvers. Now guys, having a single action revolver in your collection, I mean, I highly recommend it. They're just really a lot of fun. There's a lot of nostalgia. But it also just slows things down a little bit, and it takes the love for shooting to another level. And so I highly recommend it. And guys, if you can get a convertible where you have 2 different calibers, I mean, this makes it a great option. 45 Colt, 45 ACP. Of course, you can go with the 22 and 22 Magnum, or 357 and 9mm. And that to me is a great combination as well. But even just the standard Ruger Blackhawk in a number of different calibers, barrel lengths, they're just a lot of fun. They make you want to put on your cowboy boots and throw on a cowboy hat and strap this onto your hip. It's really a lot of fun. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic. And I ran across this one with that 40. Where is he? Where is he? Guys, definitely. Now I've loaned it. I've loaned it to someone. I don't know who I've loaned it to, but I want it back. There's something about the single action revolver that just really kind of brings it back. And as I keep hitting these stinking bullets up it, because these are really strong actions. Okay? It's fairly safe. Whether you go with 45 ACP or 44 Colt. As we get our cylinder lined up, you just drop it in. Oops, that's in 45. This will shoot both calibers, and of course it shoots both calibers because I said it did. What's wrong with you, man? I don't know how I'm supposed to sound Western with all these airplanes flying over my house. Fly, be free.